Mego was investigated as being part of organized crime. Mego's warehouse manager was arrested and tried and jailed for 6 months for bribing a customs official. Well, the prosecutor said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think Mego is connected to the Philly crime mob that controls the Jersey docks. They took him to court on racketeering, and the bank shut off Mego's line of credit. And it went through like, oh, well, Mego's involved with the mob. No, there's no proof of it.
Welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I am your host, Matthew Kaplowitz, and for the folks watching the video version today, you might notice something is a little bit different here. And one of those things being that I'm not alone today, because today we were joined by Dr. Mego himself, Mr. Paul Clark. Paul, how's it going?
It's going great.
Awesome. And not only that, you may have noticed that Paul is in the flesh with me today.
Yes.
Which is astounding, because typically we are not this kind of a show, but today we're recording here at Press Record Studios in Long Island, New York. And I'll tell you guys all about that a little bit later on here. But yeah, this is the first ever face-to-face Trek Untold recording. So, Paul, you are
awesome.
Among really...
I'm inaugural.
You are. You've inaugurated the studio. This first ever type of show we're doing. This is wild. So things are going to look a little bit different. They're going to sound a little bit different, but it's still the same kind of show. And I'm just excited to actually be here and have someone to talk to face-to-face.
Yeah, nothing beats it.
Really true, because it's, really this podcast began back in the early pandemic days, and I was forced to do everything by Zoom.
Yes.
And it worked out well. It's been great, and I love it.
Zoom is great. It's amazing how we have really accepted it. I mean, all meetings now are Zoom. And what cracks me up, though, is so many of the people that we Zoom with aren't on camera.
Right. Same for me. It's like, I'm used to doing, again, years of interviews in person at all sorts of events and stuff. And I've been doing Zoom for so many years. It's actually kind of weird to have someone right next to me, but this is good.
Hey,
I'm happy to do this again. And so, we're going to be talking today about a lot of really cool toy stuff, because as folks know, I am a hardcore toy collector. And we are joined by a person who knows the history of really the earliest Star Trek toys out there, which would be Mego.
Yes.
And so we're going to get all into that here. But before we start talking Mego toys, I want to remind everybody, since, again, we're not doing the usual type of show here, we're going to run down some of the usual spiel. So, hey, if you're not following me already on social media, don't forget to follow at Trek Untold on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and, of course, follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/@TrekUntold. And I want to shout out all of our Patreon supporters as well. They help make this show go, as a Packlet would say. So thank you to all my folks on Patreon for being wonderful to us, keeping the show going at warp speed. And if you'd like to become a supporter of Patreon, visit patreon.com/TrekUntold. We'll have all those links, of course, in the show notes. But Paul, let's start talking Trek. Let's start talking Mego.
Yes.
And I want to ask you the question I always ask my guests at the start of these things. And Paul, what is your earliest memory of Star Trek?
It had to be 1974, 75, when I saw Day of the Dove.
Day of the Dove was your first
episode in color, because we had moved to my grandparents' house and they had a color TV. So all of a sudden, every show I saw was in color, whereas previously we'd only had black and white. So I stumbled upon Star Trek. I think that was around the time the Filmation cartoon was coming on Saturday mornings. So I think the first thing I probably encountered was the Filmation cartoon. And then the show was on reruns on Channel 11 in New York.
WPIX, shout out.
WPIX. And I remember distinctly, Day of the Dove was the first episode I saw.
Really? About how old were you?
That was 70. I would have been 10 or 11.
Okay, good age to get into Star Trek.
Yep, and fell in love. Just start becoming. When PIX ran, when I was in college, PIX ran the Star Trek at midnight each night, and I'd get home at like 11:30 from my gas station job and watch Star Trek. And then first time I saw Star Trek, I was focused on Spock. Spock is like superhero. He's super strong. He's got all these extra abilities. He's really cool. When I was in college, I realized Kirk is the ultimate manager. He is the guy who leads from the front, worries about his people. I was taking courses in management in college and went, Kirk is the guy. You know,
So Kirk was your shining example of how to manage business.
that's how you manage people.
Wow. So you were also watching the animated series, you said, as a young kid too, right? Okay. So like, were you a sci-fi fan growing up, or was Star Trek really your first kind of taste of it?
I mean, I was a comic book kid. 5 years old, going to the barber, he had coverless comics.
Classic way to read them,
He
of
had
course.
he had a whole tray of comics that, and he would get the coverless ones from the stationery store when they sent back their returns. So I was reading Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, was getting into all, and shortly, 1972, Mego came out with World's Greatest Superheroes. And I went to a 5 and 10 in Mineola called Big D with my mother and brother, and saw on the shelf Batman and Robin. And my brother and I had been watching the Batman TV show. I was reading Batman comics, and I was like, a kid-sized Batman. And I, completely fell in love with him.
Yeah. So we're talking Mego, though, because you're talking about World's Greatest Superheroes, which is like an amazing toy line, which we can get into. But I actually want to back up for a second here, because Mego's history doesn't begin at World's Greatest Superheroes. So where does the story of Mego begin?
Well, 1954, Marty Abrams' dad, David, was working for a company that was doing toys in like hardware stores and, non-toy places. Yeah. And selling them in for holiday. And David realized, hey, I could do this with, year round. These places could carry toys year round, and his employer wasn't interested in it. He just saw it as something that was, holiday driven. And so David went off and started Mego. He had the contacts in Japan at that time to do the manufacturing and started the company. Marty was 16 when he started work as a salesman for the company. I mean, it's a family business. His mother was doing the outfits. It was all about tin toys.
Tin toys, Rex. That was a lot.
And then Barbie showed up, and Mattel couldn't produce enough outfits to go with the dolls. So Marty's mother, Madeline, started making outfits in that size and selling them in the stores right next to Barbie.
We're talking handmade outfits. You're not like
no,
made
in the factory. They had the contacts with the factories, and they were able to. She was designing the outfits and then having them produced, and they were able to. And there's nothing Mattel really could do about it. They weren't calling it Barbie. Yeah. She made up her own line called Maddie Mod that was the same size as Barbie. And Mego had this nice business just producing ancillary product to go with the big hit. So when G.I. Joe came out in 1964, they geared right up to do Fighting Yank. Other outfits, same size. And that was fine. It's a nice living, but you're kind of living on trends. You're hoping somebody else comes up with a popular toy. Right. So Marty, 1969, his parents said, we're going to Hong Kong to be there to work with factories. You're now president of the company. He's like 29 years old, and he's the president, and he said, we got to get into licensing. So he was at a bar watching the first football game with the Jets, the first Super Bowl, because it was 69. It was the Nets, the Jets, and the Mets all hit, and he saw the Jets win the Super Bowl and said, that Namath guy, I got to get him. So they start doing the Joe Namath doll.
And that was their first official licensed product.
Yeah. And the first game of the new season, Namath got injured and was out for the whole season. And he's like, I'm never going to risk it on a living person like that. Fighting Yank, they got a lawsuit from Hasbro saying that they copied the G.I. Joe body. And Mego was like, well, yeah, it's a doll body. What do
what can you really do about it?
It's like doing a baby doll. You just send one to China and say, to Hong Kong, it's like, do it. So they said, well, we patented that body. I went, really? Complete the reverse fingernail.
That's right.
on the G.I. Joe body. So they had to change. They kept doing Fighting Yank, but they just changed their body. He thought, well, instead of competing directly with G.I. Joe, why don't we do a cheaper, smaller version?
Because we're talking G.I. Joes for folks who don't know back then. These are the 12-inch G.I. Joes. These aren't the 3.75-inch that I had growing up. These are the big G.I. Joes.
Yes. This is 12-inch G.I. Joes, and they were selling for about $5.
Oh.
And he could do Action Jackson for like $1.99. You could buy 2 Action Jacksons for 1 G.I. Joe. So you get your kids more bang for the buck and outfits, Action Jackson got TV commercials and they were going to be big and initial orders were great. Then they changed the rules on the TV commercials and Mego could not show. They were using stop motion animation to have Action Jackson actually move.
Yeah.
And they said, oh no, you can't do that.
This is before, decades later, really, the Reagan administration pulled back a lot of those rules. And that's how my generation got the Transformers commercials and all the other G.I. Joe things. Back then you couldn't really show that because it was considered very problematic.
Right. Transformers and G.I. Joe Real American Hero became half-hour commercials for the product. And so anyway, Action Jackson had a great first year and then slowed down. And he's like, well, what am I going to do with all these 8-inch bodies? And Stan Weston came to him to pitch a 12-inch line of comic strip characters like Dick Tracy and Flash Gordon, and like what Captain Action had done.
Yeah.
And which Stan Weston also had done for Ideal. So Marty's like, I don't know, Dick Tracy? I don't know, And then he pulled out Batman. And Marty's like, Batman? Now that's the TV show's off the air, but it's still popular in syndication. So he was like, and the packaging was like day glow pink.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, So he said, give me Batman, you can get Superman and all this. And he goes, and he brought it home and showed it to his son, Ken. And Ken's like, where's Spider-Man? He goes, who's Spider-Man? They went back to, hey, can you get the rights to Spider-Man? Oh, sure I can. Yeah, Spider-Man, Captain America. That was the world's greatest superheroes.
And what was that first initial A, by the way? Because it was those 4 guys?
Superman, Batman, Robin, and Aquaman were the first 4. Funny thing was Stan Weston then went to work on Super Friends, which was Superman, Batman, Robin, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman. And I said to Marty, well, did you know about Super Friends, before? And that's why you did those characters? And he goes, no, that's just your top guys. Filmation did the Superman, Aquaman, and Batman and Robin. That's where you got it from. He goes, I looked at the cartoons. Because the toy business is always pretty driven by the animation.
Yeah, that's true. What's wild to think about, though, is like you just mentioned the first 4. It was all DC guys. But as we mentioned, eventually Spider-Man was added to this lineup here. We had, I think,
73.
What other? There were other Marvel characters too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, who else was in this lineup here? I was trying to kind of paint a picture real quick.
All right. So it was Spider-Man, Captain America. And then in 74, they went with Falcon, Iron Man, the Green Goblin, Hulk, the Lizard. And then it went to the Fantastic Four, Thor, and Conan.
Conan, who's one of my favorites ever of Mego, by the way. That was the funny thing. They had Conan was in there because Marvel had a deal to do the Conan comic. Yes.
And apparently they just kind of added that in. I guess their deal included merchandise.
Yeah, why not?
Posters, so they were able to put it in. Now you'd have to go to Robert E. Howard's estate and get a separate license for Conan. Tarzan, DC was doing a comic, and they put Tarzan in with the Migos, and then Edgar Rice Burroughs complained and said, hey, I did not add that. I didn't say you could do toys.
Yeah.
They got to come to me directly. Tarzan's big business. Tarzan didn't sell well. So, Mego just said, no, we'll just drop him.
For the best.
Yeah, he's not, in his little fabric bodysuit and everything, Tarzan had been incredibly hot in the 30s. By the 70s, he was not very hot.
And this isn't like today where you have a nostalgia market of adult buyers. Back then, it was really directed for the kids.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it might have been adult spying, but they're just not the force, you know.
So there's a reason I wanted to have you run down that list of Marvel characters for two reasons. Because number one, we're going to come back to the Lizard. But more so because, again, the picture I want to have you paint is the fact that one company is producing Marvel and DC figures simultaneously. Yes. That is unheard of now.
Yes.
That is wild. And Mego was doing it before that was even a thought in anybody's head that, oh, we should actually probably split these things and keep these guys away. No, Mego had every major comic property.
Because Mego showed that they were able to reach the kids. But that wasn't really it. It was simply a matter of Marvel did no licensing then. Stan Lee's secretary was the licensing agent. She would get a sample from Mego, bring it to Stan, and say, what do you think? And he'd go, Spider-Man should have red hands. Yeah.
Excelsior.
Like, yeah. And it's like, well, what about Captain America? He's got a shield? Yeah, he's good. It's just now this whole departments of licensing. Back then, Marty, you'd have lunch with Stan. And Stan Lee would say, hey, Batman's got a car? Spider-Man should have a car. And he goes, well, Spider-Man doesn't have a car. He clings to the wall. Well, we're going to give him a car. You put out a car for Spider-Man, we're going to put him in a comic.
And that would be the Spider Buggy.
And that's, yep. And Mego made it an 8-inch and 3 3/4. And it sold well. And it didn't last long in the comic, but
no, it did not.
Here it is.
It's funny we're bringing that up here too, because I've been reading a lot of old comics lately, and I just happened to find the Spidey one.
Spider-Man 130.
And it's in for a few issues, yeah. And even in those issues, Peter Parker and the Human Torch helps to make it. They're just making fun of the car.
It is. It
is a joke.
Nobody's taking it seriously.
No.
It's not, but it didn't. It served its purpose. It established it in canon, and that and Mego didn't. Yeah, Green Arrow got a car. Captain America got a car. You get a car. You get a car. Because kids like cars. It wasn't really Stan Lee saying, "Hey, Spider-Man should have a car." It's just the idea that, oh yeah, why not? Well, yeah, you're right. Why shouldn't we just make cars for these guys?
Yeah, why not? So at this point now, we should shift into our Star Trek talk, though, I think, because, World's Greatest Superheroes is thriving.
Oh, yeah. And, but before that, Planet of the Apes.
That's true. How could I forget Planet of the Apes?
That was a big one. And the funny thing, it's a great story. Marvin, wait a minute, give me a sec. AHI, Marvin Azrak, okay, was a competitor of Marty. Marty says that, we were AHI's R&D lab. Whatever we made, he ripped it off.
What were they doing back then?
A lot of, parachutes, little
the drugstore toys,
figure.
really.
Drugstore toys. Yeah. Stuff that's cheap, inexpensive. The kid sees, I want that. They weren't doing quality stuff. But they were out there. And Marvin had made a deal with 20th Century Fox to do Planet of the Apes. And the lawyer was friends with Marty and, knew him well. And he said, well, hey, I just got a check from Marvin for, like $10,000 for Planet of the Apes. And Marty said, rip it up. I'll give you a check for $40,000 right now. And he's like, you're kidding. And Marty reached over, took the check and ripped it up. And
That's Marty.
Went, oh, Marvin was like angry. They now, the two of them now have dinner these days. They're, the war's over.
Yeah.
But it really, Marty put out Planet of the Apes because he said, and I said to him, how did you know the Planet of the Apes was going to be worth four times what Marvin was willing to put up front?
That's a big investment.
And he said, because my son wanted me to take him to the movies. And I sat through 3 of those movies. And he said, and I looked around and the theater's full of all these kids watching 6 hours of movies.
Yeah.
And he's like, that tells you that's where they are. So Planet of the Apes did great business. He did $20 million in Planet of the Apes in 2 years.
Wow. That's again off of a $40,000 investment, which even today is like a joke of a number. Nothing is $40,000.
Let me explain. That's up front. You licensing. They want some money up front against royalties. Now, after a while, they knew Marty was going to produce, so he didn't have to give up front. They just said, I'll do that. I'll do Happy Days. Okay. And then the royalties start coming in and you don't worry, and he's good for it. So, now licensing departments are more about the upfront than they are the royalty because so many, it started with Gene Simmons. He kept licensing Kiss out to people for $10,000 or $20,000, and they wouldn't make anything because, you know, a lot of people are just bozos. They talk big and never produce.
Right.
And he was willing to like promote it. Oh, the Kiss coffin, the Kiss barbecue, the Kiss, you know, and it never come out. And the fans are like, well, what happened to that? And he's like, so he started saying, forget it. I want $50,000. I want $50,000. And if you don't produce something, at least it's worth my time. And then it went to 100,000, you know, and then that in licensing, that then extends to everywhere. And next thing you know, the Batman TV show license was $100,000 when they finally settled all the legal.
Right.
So, you know, but it's, if you produce, you know, it's against your royalties. So Star Trek, lawyer from Paramount came to Marty, said, hey, did you see you doing Planet of the Apes? You're doing great with superheroes. You're in every store in the country, you know, Star Trek. And Marty's like, absolutely. I love Star Trek.
He was a fan too.
A Trekkie.
Yeah.
He and I have had long conversations about Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Discovery. He knows everything. Next Generation, he is a Trekkie.
So you meet him and you feel like he wouldn't be that kind of a guy, but it's cool to hear that he is.
He is. We have long conversations about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. He doesn't really read comic books, though I pointed him to a website where you can read everything online.
We'll keep that to ourselves, though.
Yeah. And it's really cool. But yeah, so he's, you know, he is a geek, but he doesn't, you know, he's also a big sports fan, you know.
Yeah.
He still sees nerd and geek as derogatory terms.
Huh.
Whenever I introduce myself to somebody, you know, with the company, I say, I'm the house nerd. And he goes, you shouldn't put yourself down like that. I go, no, Marty, nerd is a badge of honor. We wear it proudly. So Star Trek, absolutely. Go. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, the Klingon. That was the first five.
First five.
Okay. Got another story.
All right, go for it.
I'll let you have a word in edgewise.
I'll get it eventually. It's fine.
I wrote a letter to Mego when I became a Star Trek fan. And I said, you should make Star Trek action figures.
You were one of those.
I have a copy of the letter, and it was from 1975. So a week till later, 2 weeks later, I go into Big D in Mineola, where I got my other superheroes, and on the shelf is Star Trek Megos. I go, they got my letter.
That's all because of you.
Yeah.
No one else. All because of you.
It was all me. Yeah.
That's got to be pretty rewarding, though, to see that. And, you know, one thing I've wondered about is, you know, especially this additional 5 here. You know, we're talking about 1974, 1975. This is the era, right? So this is after the original series is off the air as far as new episodes. Mm-hmm. At this point, it's in reruns. And we've also got the animated series.
Yes.
So I've heard that when it came to the likenesses of those original characters, that they were based more on the animated series more so than they were on the actors. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I've said to Marty, looking at the Klingon, it looks like the animated series. And, you know, I said, well, you did Star Trek because of the animated series. And he says, no, I didn't. I did it because I liked the show. He didn't know. He says he didn't know about the Filmation series, which I find hard to believe for a guy that into, you know, that tight on the pulse, you know. Obviously they were, because the animated series took the actors and smoothed it, you know, and that's what Mego
style.
did. Mego's real charm was they wouldn't do that tight a reproduction, you know, and because back then with rotational casting, you just can't. Fine lines don't show up when you do rotational casting.
It's very idealized sort of look for the characters.
It's an ideal, yeah. It's an idealized. So, also, there wasn't as much interest in nailing the likeness. You know, it wasn't about the actor; it was about the character. You know, look at Power Records and everything else that came out. You know, they really weren't looking to do a detailed portrait of Leonard Nimoy. They were just doing Spock. If he had ears and a bowl haircut, he's good.
So that's initially the figures, and we've got a lot to talk about the figures here, but I do want to point out what's been in front of us this entire chat here. Because let's start talking now. You know, Mego starts with the figures, but of course it goes well, and they start to branch out. So what is this big beauty we have on our table today?
This is the Mego 1975 U.S. Star Trek Enterprise playset with transporter.
Which is so fun. Hopefully it's working right. We can't tell from our angle, but we'll assume it is.
Let's put it this way. There's a red and a green. Yeah.
I feel like I'm in Star Trek toy royalty right now because I've got this thing in front of me, and it's gorgeous.
I brought this to Marty Abrams' house. We were doing a documentary for the Toys That Made Us on Mego Star Trek, and I brought it to his house and left it there overnight. And his wife said he was playing with the transporter all night.
I would too.
I brought it full of figures, vintage. But this sold 500,000 pieces.
That's a wild number for the 70s.
It was. They were selling, but it was $15 retail, and it's a perfect playset. It folds up and it has a carrying case. You can lock it and take it to grandma's. Go there, open it up again. You're on an alien planet that smells of cough drops.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. And the interesting thing about this too, like what kind of is interesting about this is just like how much vinyl is used. Like this isn't like you think of a playset for my generation.
This was made in Brooklyn.
Made in Brooklyn, really?
These were made in Brooklyn because there was a company there that would do the, like for furniture, that would do the vinyl. The clear vinyl wrapped and sealed with rivets.
It's like my Italian grandmother's couch.
It is. But it's wiped clean. You wipe it clean and it stays neat. And, but, when Diamond Select Toys wanted to make this enterprise again, they went to China, mainland China, and they were like, it's going to cost, so much. And we have to ship them one to a case. And we were on a panel at New York Comic-Con, and Marty was there, and he said, "Oh, where'd you have this done?" He goes, "Oh, China." He goes, "Hey, you should have had it done in Brooklyn."
I know a guy.
And, yeah, literally, he knows a guy. Orthodox Jews that do this, and Marty knows through the contacts and had it done. So it was done domestically, shipped out domestically, and it was great.
We should add too, because again, a lot of modern toy collectors. These days, most of the companies are actually now in California. They kind of moved out to the West Coast, but back in this time period, really the bulk of the toy companies and production was done in the East Coast and in New York.
200 Fifth Avenue is the toy building.
Yep.
Okay. That is where every company had an office. That's where Toy Fair was, not at the Javits Center.
Yep. Before Javits was there.
But buyers would come in February and go up to the different floors. All the companies had showrooms set up to show their product. It was worth your life if you worked for another company to sneak into somebody else's showroom. That was sabotage.
Yeah. It's cutthroat days.
But Marty said, I couldn't talk in the elevator because I was being listened to. He says, whatever I said in the elevator, by the time I got out, somebody was prototyping it.
And it really is very much cutthroat because it's also all about the Benjamins at the end of the day. And one of the things about Mego is that they've always been known for being very cost-effective toys.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of talk about that now with the figures here, because we can go into numbers about profits and all that thing, but profits mean nothing unless we know how much stuff cost and why they were so cheap. So,
right.
We can use this as an example. We can use the figures as an example. But what made Mego different in terms of their costs that made them so much more profitable, too, back in the day?
The one common body. They weren't they weren't tooling a new body every time. One of the comedies of modern action figures is it's all injection molded and it's all sculpted plastic. So that every time you do it, you have to make a new tool. And tooling is about $5,000 for an injection tool that would make one figure.
Mm-hmm.
So Mego did a rotocast head, did the same accessories. With Star Trek, they made lower legs out of blow molds. So instead of even doing boots, every Star Trek character and Zorro got blow molded lower legs.
Which I appreciate, by the way. I'm happy they weren't like removable boots because there would be just like thousands of those boots missing at this point.
Yes, there would. And as Dr. Mego, I'd be making money selling them replacement boots.
So maybe there was a mistake along the way that maybe Mego should have actually done boots.
It was brilliant because it's like, what? Kirk does not have to think of play value. They were very much thinking about play value. Do you need to lose a boot after having done the superheroes? It's like, well, how often does Captain Kirk take off his boots?
Really, never.
They know. Oh no.
Okay, well, that's a little bit. Maybe that's
the one episode.
Or, yeah.
That which not that
one with the Native American analogy.
No.
Or is it a different one?
When
did he have his boots on that one?
The buzzy people, the ones that were going faster. There was definitely a scene of Kirk putting his boot on after.
Oh, jeez. Talking season 3, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Season 3.
Enough said. So yeah, that's as far as like what they were doing to kind of keep the cost down. It's brilliant. It worked out really well for them, and the line continued.
Everybody
got
got the same phaser.
Everybody got the same phaser, which is the cutest little thing, by the way.
And the bad guys got red ones.
Yep.
You know, it's like, when I did, if you can see on here, I did core the Klingon.
Yes.
I gave him a Klingon disruptor.
It's a proper disruptor.
And Marty said to me, why don't you just give him the same gun? I go, Marty, you're dealing with grown men now. Details matter. It has to be screen accurate.
Yeah.
We're watching the episodes now on a 70-inch TV in 4K. You know, it's really detailed. I now know that Core did not have shiny, sparkly black pants, but they're gold, which shows up very nicely in scenes on big screen TV.
Yeah.
Know? So, no, I can't get away with, just make them look like the same, you know.
Well, this is a perfect segue, Paul, because now we're going to talk about the continuation of those figures, because there was a lot of repeated parts. And this comes back to why we were discussing some of the Marvel guys a little bit earlier. So let's kind of just walk down that Star Trek line and take us on a tour of what happened.
You mean the Gorn?
I do mean the Gorn, yeah. And he's joining. A Gorn is joining us today, not that original Gorn, but
okay. You have to understand. Back then, Mego got black and white stills from Paramount. They may catch an episode on TV. They might have a black and white TV, you know, really. And nobody was really at Paramount or at Mego was really too concerned about screen accurate.
This is kind of the early days of licensing.
It is. And, you know, Star Trek was a property that Paramount had pretty much ignored. You know, Paramount had bought Desilu, and until Star Wars hit, I mean, Roddenberry had been talking about doing another show, but when Star Wars hit, all of a sudden the execs at Paramount said, "Ooh, don't we have a space thing?
Yeah.
Dig that space thing out and make a movie." So, you know, the motion picture, while we think it was a you know, something that would obviously happen, wasn't really going to happen until Star Wars hit.
Right.
If Star Wars had flopped, I think we would have been seeing a TV show called Star Trek 2.
Star Trek Phase 2, I think it was, right? Something like that, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which we would have seen some bits of in the motion picture. I do want to come back to the motion picture, but before we get there, though, just talking again about the 8-inch figures here.
Yes, yeah.
You know, we talked about that initial wave. To come, we also had Uhura, we had a bunch of aliens, and that's where it gets kind of interesting with the aliens.
So right after they did the first 5, I don't know why, but somebody must have said, "What about Uhura?" And they were like, "Well, they're selling. What are we going to do? We just did the crew." And they go, "Well, we should do aliens." So they did Uhura, and then they put out the Sharon, the black and white face, you know, but not Frank Gorsh, not screen accurate.
Right.
They just said, "Well, he's got half his face is black, half face is white, half his outfit's black, half the outfit's white." These are toy guys. These are, you know, they're going, what difference does it make? Kids don't care.
And I have to ask you on that note too, who was the figure that they used for that? If it was it brand new, or was it actually someone else's pre-used mold?
It is. It's Verdon from Planet of the Apes.
So it's a Planet of the Apes figure they just kind of repainted.
They took the Verdon, which was probably a sculpt laying around since they had done that in 75, you know, and the aliens hit in 76. So somebody probably grabbed, you know, a cast of it and went,
yeah, there you go. Just painted it and
sculpted. You know, I mean, look, they're sculptors. You know, I work with sculptors now, and sometimes I will tell them, "Listen, I want you to take this head and change it. You know, I like this look, but I want it to be different." You know, with Gorn, another of the aliens, great character, but how many of these guys really ever saw it in color?
True.
So you get the black and white photos, you go, "Oh, that looks like the Lizard. We just did him from Marvel." And they go, "Great, do him in brown." Well, because the Lizard's green.
Yep.
So even if somebody said, "No, the Gorn's green," yeah, but we can't use that on this, you know, and give him a Klingon outfit. And we got leftover Planet 8 bodies. Put that on there too.
It is a kit bash. That is a literal definition of a kit bash.
Because listen, it's a company. You know, they're putting out product. They're selling it to kids, and this is I hear all the time. Every time I push back for more quality, they go, "Are kids going to really know?" I said, "You're not selling to kids. You're selling to grown-ups." All right. And yes, they do. They know every detail.
We really do.
We were having lunch. The Mego people and Star Trek people were having lunch in the city one day. And one of the Star Trek people asked me, "Have you seen Discovery?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm not all caught up, but I know Pike is in it." And I said, "When you see Pike, you know the Telosians can't be far behind." Star Trek people all laugh.
Yeah.
The Mego people said, "What the hell did you just say?" And I repeated, I said, "When you see Pike, you know the Telosians can't be far behind." And they're like, "What does that mean?"
It's like somebody in finance is checking their iPhone, like, do we have an appointment with a Telosian on Sunday?
Yeah, they're going, "What the?" And literally, like driving home, the president of the company is going, "When you see Pike, you know the Telosians can't be far behind." Like it's just a joke he didn't get. He's trying to understand. If not for my horse, I never would have spent that year in college. I'm like, I said, "Look, you see Pike, that's a fixed point in time. So you know where. And you know sooner or later he's going to meet the Telosians." That's, it's part of canon. It's part of, Pike is going to get injured and then he's going to go off the Telosians. So it's just a matter of where are we in Pike's timeline? Like I had 3 heads. But that's what so when they go, "Oh, what difference does it make?" It matters. Okay? Details matter.
Hey everybody, we'll get right back to the interview in 1 second, but I wanted to remind you all to check out Trek Untold over at Patreon. Patreon is the best way to directly support creators of things you like through a monthly subscription of an amount that you can choose. Trek Untold has a few different tiers already with different benefits, ranging from early access to episodes, the ability to ask a future guest questions, exclusive merchandise, and other bonuses that I'd love to offer, but first I need to grow that Patreon community to do that. Trek Untold has been around since mid-2020 and has grown a ton since then, thanks to listeners and viewers like you. Through a platform like Patreon, you can help me keep improving the quality of each episode and keep bringing you new interviews with folks that make the Star Trek universe what it is. If this community can grow more over on Patreon, I can offer new perks like watch parties, exclusive Trek Untold episodes, being able to directly interact with guests, and other things, but in order to do that, I need to know my audience wants these things. The best way to tell me what you want is by supporting us on Patreon, so please, check us out at patreon.com/TrekUntold today and become a bigger part of the Trek Untold family. And now, back to the interview. There was another story and something else I want to ask you about, and that's Star Wars.
Yes.
Okay, Star Wars popped up in 1977. Kenner does their action figures. I happen to have a few here. I've got myself a Luke in X-Wing outfit, and I got my original Luke right here. Missing the lightsaber, of course, because he is, but this is Kenner. Came out.
Yeah.
There's rumors and hearsay. I'd like to kind of get to the bottom of this one here.
Sure.
Was Mego ever offered the Star Wars license? Was that something that they wanted to pursue? What happened?
Okay. All right. The lawyer from Fox who came to Marty with Planet of the Apes came to Mark Pendergrass. Yeah, it's in the book on Mego. He came to see Marty. Didn't have an appointment. Just came to drop by the Mego offices in New York and said, "Oh, I've got some stills and some artwork for this new science fiction movie we're doing called Star Wars." Nobody had any idea about any of it. It was going to be another Close Encounters of the Third Kind, another 2001. But Mego always grabbed science fiction and fantasy. So absolutely. Mego did $20 million $15 million the night of Toy Fair when they introduced Wizard of Oz. Just at a party, they had the actors from the movie and they wrote $15 million in business right there. So another $5 million by the end of the show. So fantasy, science fiction, superheroes, absolutely. Mego's, Ballywick. He came in and Marty was in Japan signing the deal for Micronauts. And nobody's in the office. The lawyer was there and he's like, come next week. Marty will be back. You'll definitely sign that. We take anything just to keep it from somebody else.
Yeah.
Logan's Run, just to keep it from somebody else. He'll take it. He said, "Oh, okay. Well, in the same building as Kenner." And so Mark's like, "Well, I'm here. I might as well go see Bernie Loomis, who normally is in Cincinnati, but he was in New York." And he went in and he goes, "Oh, wait, Marty was out of town. He didn't. I'll take it."
Wow.
I don't care what it is. I take it.
Just pulled it right from out under the rug.
Absolutely. Yeah. Get $25,000 for everything. Coloring books, everything. They had no idea. They were not going, oh, this is going to be the biggest. Nobody had any clue. It's the guy that did American Graffiti.
Yeah.
But it's a space movie, and it's either he wanted to do Lucas wanted to do Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
But Dino De Laurentiis had it tied up. So he said, I'll make my own Flash Gordon. And Star Wars,
Kind of worked out.
So, I mean, Mego didn't pass on it. Nobody was there who could have grabbed it. If, anybody in the office had the authority, and that's the problem with a small company.
Yeah.
Marty was in Japan. His production manager, Neil Kublin, was in Japan with him, going over Micronauts. Now, Micronauts did great business. And Baron Karza looks just like Darth Vader. That came out, Micronauts hit in 76. Star Wars came out in late 77. Remember, they missed Christmas.
Yes, they did.
So it was actually 78 before the toys hit. But, Mego would have done 8-inch Star Wars.
It's crazy to think how different it could have been.
But at the same time, because of the gas price shortages, petroleum goes up. Petroleum is how plastic is made. Because of the oil crunch of 73, Mego put out Comic Action Heroes, which are 3 3/4 inch with the bent knees and the unfortunate hand placement. And I go, how did that ever get past a meeting? How did anybody see a prototype and not go, whoa, you got to move that hand. You got to turn that. You got to do something on that. But forevermore, people will be like, why is he doing that? And I'll leave it up to you to put a video or a picture.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one. But that is kind of the crazy thing, though, because, again, now, at this point, Kenner comes along and they do their Star Wars figures and 3 3/4 inch.
Because they took some Dukes of Hazzard figures in order to make the prototypes.
Right.
Because Mego was doing 8-inch and 3 3/4, because that was, there was a gas crisis again in 77.
Yeah.
So as a result, they were going, well, let's keep going with the smaller size. It's cheaper, kid friendly. So Star Wars then, once Star Wars came out, it became the format.
Right.
Because Star Wars ate everybody's lunch.
And that brings us to the next Mego toy I want to cover today, which is this guy right here. I've got a few of these guys. In fact, I'll hold a bunch of them up here. These were the motion picture figures from Star Trek, and these are quite different than the typical Megos that you'd think about, because these guys are the 3 3/4 inches.
Yes.
And I was telling you, Paul, before we started doing this, I feel very strongly about these figures that these have much better likenesses than the Kenner Star Wars did from that era. Well, I don't really know if Kenner caught up until years later.
Kenner was mainly a board game company. They were doing some, they weren't really in the action figure business. And if they were, they weren't doing licensed. Mego had a lot of good sculptors that were doing chair. You have to understand, when the 8-inch line was a hit, Marty then turned and said, I'm going after Barbie. And he put out Cher, the anti-Barbie. And he did Captain Tennille and Farrah Fawcett. He was doing 12-inch fashion dolls and making a lot of money off it. He gave Cher a royalty check for $1 million. That made news. Nobody had ever gotten $1 million royalty check.
Yeah.
On licensing, on licensing a toy, So his sculptors were working at larger size and doing facial feature, likenesses and doing much better work. So when Kenner, came out with very simplistic, because it's just kids.
Yeah, I mean, again,
you got Darth Vader right. But in a way, Lucas was much more a gearhead. So the ships had to be right.
Ships are amazing, yeah.
See, Lucas looks at Luke Skywalker and goes, doesn't look like Mark Hamill. Good.
Not at all. No, there's zero Mark Hamill in this whatsoever.
And he's like, who is he? Mark Hamill was just a blonde young guy that he got to play Luke.
Yep.
And if he gave him a hard time, he'd put somebody else in. But Darth Vader was the important character. He was very, 53 Buick.
Yeah.
But Lucas is very much a gearhead. He's into cars, so it was all to him about the ships. So Star Wars, really, there's two kinds of toy collectors. There's figure guys and vehicle guys. There's the guys that like Batman and the guys that like the Batmobile. So Star Wars really spoke to the vehicle guys more. The ships were more important,
Yeah.
But when Mego did the 12-inch Star Trek The Motion Picture, they did 12-inch and they did 3 3/4 because they did not like the 3 3/4. It lacked a lot of charm. So they still wanted to put out the large size that could really capture the face. Before Star Trek The Motion Picture came out, Paramount asked Mego to put out more 8-inch Kirk and Spocks. Flooded the market with them to get the public ready for the motion picture. That's why you have found Mego, Kirk and Spocks out there.
Yeah, it's true.
Well into the 80s.
Yeah.
Creation in Mineola, the Creation Entertainment that runs the conventions, started as a retail store in Mineola on Jericho Turnpike. And they had literally a tray, like boxes of Mego, Kirk and Spocks.
That's wild.
They also had the second series, Aliens.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about those aliens, too. Because, again, I'm just marveling at how great these figures were. Because, really, these likenesses are gorgeous. The folds, the clothing. It's such an interesting time, too, for Star Trek stuff. But, yeah, the real rare ones was the aliens. And I believe that's because basically the way these guys were shipped was Starfleet was wave 1, and then aliens were wave 2. And really no one carried the aliens, right?
Well, no. The first set, which was Sharon, Gorn, the Neptunian.
There was a Neptunian, yes.
And
was the Megado in that wave?
And Megado. No, not Megado. You think I'd write stuff down?
I think I would know this. Think I do my homework?
All right. The second wave, which was really rare, was the Andorian, the Romulan, the Megado, and the Telosian. So let you guys figure out. Have you guys write in which one we left out, which was the Keeper.
Keeper.
Which I laugh when I say Neptunian and the Keeper, because when I made the Keeper with Diamond Select Toys, Paramount said, that's not our character. And I go, well, it's kind of like Balak. And they go, no, the Keepers were the Telosians and Balak was Balak. And he said, Mego just made that. We didn't make that character. And I said, okay. They said, well, just take the TM off it. You can do it, But the Neptunian was created completely by Mego. It's not in any show. It's not in the animated series. It's not anywhere. They basically said, hey, how about a fish alien?
Why not?
It's just kids.
Yeah.
Now, kids would love it. So they actually are out there. You can tell how well something sold by how prevalent it is in the aftermarket. There's still plenty of Sharon, Gorn, Keeper, and a different guy. And the other guy I forgot.
The other guy. We'll leave it at that.
But the second series did not sell well, didn't get distribution well. And so the reason why they're so hard to find is because they just didn't get sold.
That's kind of the same story for the motion picture aliens, too.
Yeah. And this is the reality of the toy business is guys go, oh, these are really rare. Well, they may have produced less because they were worried, like female characters, they frequently produce less of. Or buyers, you have to understand the toy business. You show the manufacturer shows the product. Buyers have to place orders or it doesn't get made. And I've had that with, we go to shows and the retailers like Walmart and Target and, Best Buy, and there's a lot less now.
Yeah.
They place their orders, Diamond, distributor license to play. And you just go through the orders and go, well, nobody ordered this or in tiny numbers. So we just can't go to production. And the fans shriek. They're like, but you showed it. I'm like, I'm sorry. You're not children. Now you guys know all these details.
It's a very different time now. Yeah. It's a lot more transparent.
And it's all constantly every day on the social media, What are we doing? What are you doing next? What's coming out?
I mean, I'm not even a toy maker, but I see it all the time in different pages where it's like, you showed this 3 months ago. Why isn't it in my hands yet? And I'm like, do you know that a toy takes 12 to 18 months at minimum from start to finish?
If it gets green-lighted.
And even then it could still get stopped dead in its tracks at any point.
Right. And with COVID, we were working in Marty's basement, which is not a bad place.
Yeah.
His house is right next to the Merchant Marine Academy and looks out on the Throgs Neck Bridge. So I'm working in a basement, but I've got a view of the Throgs Neck Bridge. So I'm like, this is not bad.
I've been lucky enough to visit his house once. That was in 2016 when they were announcing the return of Mego, and that's a whole fun story we can get into in a different episode, perhaps. But yeah, it's a lovely house. And just to wrap up our talk of this era of Mego, because I do want to go into the demise, but I want to talk about some unproduced stuff. So I know for a fact that if we're talking motion picture, that there was an unproduced shuttlecraft that was meant to go with the bridge play set. I don't know if you've ever found it or heard about it, but was there anything else for the 8-inchers as well? I mean,
there was. Okay. Apparently, there were two things. And actually, they were found in, I think, catalogs. Because mail order catalogs, like the major department stores and all would have catalogs.
Sears and JCPenney.
And they would have to print those in like May.
Yeah.
To then drop on to get to your house by like August, just when you're thinking about Christmas.
Of course, nothing changes.
In publishing, there's a saying, Christmas in July.
That's very true.
So they had probably shown at Toy Fair a Spock in a vehicle where he was face down. Like a moon rover or something, kind of like this little planetary vehicle where Spock would just be placed, the figure would be placed in on his stomach.
So it's like a spider buggy, but he's doing a face plant.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was planned and never saw the light of day. There was another one where it was a play set where their sick bay would be on one level, and the sick bay bed was like that red plastic basket they give you French fries in, which probably somebody just brought in and go, hey, what about this?
Yeah.
We had lunch and they gave me this. Hey, this would fit a figure. And then it was supposed to be like engineering on a lower level. So, it was kind of like, it was a great idea, but there wasn't enough retailer interest to go to production. So.
And then there was, as mentioned too, the Vulcan shuttlecraft for the motion picture, which I know there's like one or two photos of I've seen on the Mego Museum. That's something all that exists of that too.
Yeah. A lot of times, sometimes you would just get a sketch.
Yeah.
Somebody may not even get to prototype stage. I have prototyped figures that have never been produced. So I'm the only one that has the only copy of it, only, but what we try to do is we try not to show it. And I get this every day. Like, well, what about the next wave? What are you doing? I'm like, not till it's approved, not till I'm told, yes, we're going to production with this. The Telosian and the Andorian Ambassador that Mego just put out.
Yes.
That did not get enough interest from retailers. It got some, but the decision was, well, maybe we won't make them. And Marty actually said, no, we're going to make them. Those really look cool. We had been showing them for quite a while. And he's like, no, I want to see them in production.
I remember seeing those at Toy Fair because I have another YouTube channel for folks who don't know called Nerd News Today. And I've covered Mego at Toy Fairs. And I remember seeing it, and that's like really the top thing everybody was commenting on was like they really wanted that Telosian.
And Marty hears you. He's there. He's a fan. He's right there. He hears what people say. He knows.
He's kind of always had something on the beat. He's always had the beat of the pulse or whatever that saying is. But yeah, he's always kind of like had his ear to the ground.
Finger is on the pulse.
Sure, that works too. Let's go with that.
It is. And he will very much come to me and say, Shatner just went up to space. We should do a Shatner and Bezos. I go, are you kidding? You're not going to get Jeff Bezos to give you a license for his likeness? Do you know how many people would like to make a Jeff Bezos voodoo doll?
But now I'm just imagining like a 90-year-old Shatner figure with like some kind of Mego style rocket ship. I mean, that right there's money.
Oh, you kidding?
Yeah.
We'd put him in the blue Origin uniform. And I'm like, do you realize you got to make a licensing deal with the head of Amazon? Not that he won't. So I said, okay, I'm on it. So I sculpted, I had a 3D sculptor. We've moved all the sculpting now to 3D. That way I can send a file to the factory and I can send them a pattern. And because of COVID, we couldn't visit. We still can't visit the factory. I don't know. I think they just don't want us there.
That could be that. I don't know, but
it's frustrating because I have to do everything by email and FedEx. So it's kind of tough. And factories are notorious for waiting to the last minute and then go, okay, what do you think? And I go, no, this is completely wrong. The color of the Andorian Ambassador is wrong. It is too blue. It should be lighter. And I went, Well, we already ran them
Hmm.
because, we got to make this shipping deadline. We can fix it the next run.
Sure.
If there is a next run, so
Running changes happens.
running change.
See it all the time with Mattel these days in the wrestling figures. They do it plenty.
Yeah. And if the stuff sells enough, yeah, you can do that.
I want to also kind of back it up for a second here because we're talking about Mego today right there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a time period where there was no Mego at all.
Yeah.
So to kind of back it up for a moment here, what would you say was the top reason that Mego initially collapsed?
Oh, no, I know exactly.
I'm trying to be political and nice about it.
No. It's a cool story. And I said to Marty, you shouldn't shy away from it. You should say it proudly. Mego was investigated as being part of organized crime.
Which think about that for a second. A toy company. That's like today if Hasbro is being investigated for working with the mafia. Just think about that.
But it's the same thing because you ship product through the docks of New York. They would bring in a lot of product because Mego had a warehouse on Long Island in Bohemia. And so they were shipping a lot of things off the boat, taking it right out to the warehouse. They would ship from Newark out to Toys R Us, which is in Newark. It wasn't all container loads, out to Mattel.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, that's arriving at the West Coast and go to Walmart's. Everybody, look, you ship by boat, you truck across the country. That's how you got to break up the containers or just put the container on it on an 18-wheeler and off it goes. So Marty's, Mego's warehouse manager in Newark said, paid a bribe to somebody to get a shipment sent through in time for holiday. And that warehouse manager was arrested and tried and jailed for 6 months for bribing a customs official. Well, the prosecutor said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think Mego is connected to a Philly crime mob that controls the Jersey docks, Comrade Persico. One of my hobbies is actually studying organized crime. So they're like, Mego is connected with Persico. And they questioned Marty, and he's like, I don't know the guy. I don't know, Look, we gave somebody some money to get something through to get, it's not like it's just, the warehouse manager's doing time. That's it. No, they thought they could flip the warehouse manager on Marty and Marty would flip on Persico or the next guy. And that's how prosecutions are done. You keep going up the chain and pushing on the next one saying, well, we're going to throw the book at you. You're going to go to jail for 10 years, if you don't cooperate and give us information on the next guy. Marty's like, I can't give you anything. I don't know. He's like, of course, with, organized crime, you could have Christmas cards with the guy and you'll say you don't know him. So, but he really didn't. And so they took him to court on racketeering, and the bank shut off Mego's line of credit.
That'll kill a company pretty quickly.
And it went through like, oh, well, Mego's involved with the mob. No, there's no proof of it. Marty was convicted of wire fraud. He sent his parents money in Hong Kong because they were buying a house. And they said, well, you're funneling money out of the country. My parents are part of the company. I'm not sending, we're not, it's like, but he couldn't prove the case. Marty was given a fine, a suspended sentence of, okay, so you wired money out of the country without filling out the paperwork. Okay. And the judge said to the prosecutor, you told me there was this whole big conspiracy of criminal crime families connected to this toy company, and you can't prove anything. And he goes, well, he got, and the prosecutor says to Marty after, hey, no hard feelings. The company's in shambles.
No hard
Marty
feelings.
had to leave the board, and they're like, and then it ran into the dirt. It's once your line of credit's frozen, you can't get any work done. You can't get things out there. So they had to turn Mego into something else. And by 82, it was over. There was no reason for it. it wasn't like Mego wasn't doing well. It was rumor and innuendo, and in the toy business, you just can't survive that. So, so Marty then turned around and started working with Hasbro on making Transformers.
Yeah.
He actually was working with an engineer in Japan with the hinge to turn a robot into a car and a car back into a robot. And he was going to call it Interchangeables.
Interchangeables.
I'm like, yeah, about those names.
Yeah. But still, he didn't leave the industry, though, so it's kind of important. He kept it up.
So he called Steven Hasfeld at Hasbro, Hassenfeld, the Hasbros, and said, look, I got this engineer working on this thing. I think it's a cool idea. You take it. I'm now in a whole, and Marty did consulting for Hasbro all through the 80s. So he's the guy who's really responsible for Transformers. Now, would Transformers have sold without the commercials, without the TV line, without the TV shows? I don't know. With the name Interchangeables, would that have done
maybe
it?
Not.
But it would have been it may not have been the powerhouse it became, but the whole concept of car becomes, robot, a truck becomes a robot, and then, a boombox becomes a robot.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
My mother made me give away my Megos in September of 1976.
And when did you disown your mother?
She said, you're too old to be playing with dolls. Because remember, we didn't have the term action figure.
Yeah, and there was no nostalgia market. There was no real value at that point.
Before Star Wars, nobody called them action figures. They were dolls.
That's a very true point I do want to bring up, because a lot of collectors today, they don't like calling them dolls. But let's be honest here. I mean, yes, they are action figures, but their roots are all in dolls. And I'm also a wrestling toy collector. And one of the biggest thing that irks me is I'll see these toy collectors, like they want soft goods now. They want more accessories.
Absolutely.
And I'm just like, great, cool. That's very much like a doll. Can we just say that what these things are?
Well, no, what I always say is when people say doll, they do it to try to make you flinch.
Exactly.
They do it to try to get under your skin. Own the name doll. Refuse to give them the satisfaction. Are you playing with your dolls? Yeah. And my wife is cool with it. I'm like, yeah, I'm 50 years old and I play with dolls. What else you got?
And honestly, it's kind of like the root of the toys. It's really not an insult. It's just the truth, because all modern action figures, they began at Barbie.
But the point is, what was great about Mego is fabric gives you much more realism than just molded plastic.
Totally does.
You can, with capes, you can do there's not a Darth Vader. I mean, now they're using PVC as the cape material, but it still it's molded and cool, but it lacks that real 3D tactile that clothing brings to a figure.
Yeah, there's something special about it, and that's the Mego charm, too, is they have that kind of retro vibe to them that you don't really see in a lot of other figures.
My whole mission has been to try to get a new generation into the Mego format. So it's not just 50-year-old men go, yeah, I remember I had that. No, there's so much more you can do, and you can enjoy it. And don't let people, make you feel weird and say, you play with your dolls?
This is kind of a perfect segue, though, because this leads into now, we just talked about the demise of Mego, but now we're into the revival of Mego. In 2016, company comes back. And this time around, Paul Clark is not just a fan. He went from being fan collector to becoming Dr. Mego and now becoming part of the Mego world.
So I had to give away my toys in 76. I gave them to my friend's little brother. He destroyed them. A week later, I went back. I said, oh, great, I'll just keep them at Tom's house. I'll just go over there. Yeah. His brother ripped them apart. Blew them up. I'm like, nothing? Yeah. Okay. So high school, senior year of high school, I meet a girl. For my 18th birthday, she gives me Superman, Spider-Man, and Captain America Megos from Toys R Us. Okay. I'm like, you got me Megos. She goes, I know you like superheroes. I go, these are Megos. My mother made me give them away. I'm 18. I have a car. I have a job. She can't tell me what to do. I'm back. And then I started buying. I was going around to stores to buy them up. And I'm like, where is everything? What's going on? I was buying in the flea market at Roosevelt Raceway in, out here in Garden City. And there was a guy who was bringing Megos from Canada.
Huh.
And I was like, what happened? Where is Mego? Why aren't I seeing them? He goes, oh, then you know, they went out of business. And I was like, I stood there in that parking lot, right then and there, and swore an oath. This wrong of history will be righted. Mego will come back. I will bring it back.
That's pretty much what happened. Maybe not entirely single-handedly, but...
Until the internet. I had been trying to figure out how to make replacement parts.
Yes.
Because, you know, you lose belts, boots, capes, gloves all the time, you know, phasers, you know. I want to learn. I started to make capes, and I was sewing them along on the railroad, going back and forth to work. And some guy looks at me, what are you doing? I said, minding my own business. What are you doing? He goes, I said, I'm making Batman capes. He goes, oh, for kids? Sure, for kids, yeah. Little kids about that big, yeah.
Very small kids.
But Dr. Mego was, once the internet came out and the Mego Museum came out, and we found that I wasn't the only grown man that was playing with toys.
And I'd say I'm not like a big Mego collector, but even I knew about Dr. Mego in my little small world of action figures.
I started in 1997 as Dr. Mego. Went out to the message boards of Mego Museum and said, from now on, call me Dr. Mego. And they went, okay, whatever, dude. And I started doing, I figured out how to make the gloves using soldering gun and pool toys. I figured out how to make the boots out of using resin and silicone rubber. I can do the color, no shrinkage. You know, I'm doing it all in my garage, nights and weekends. I wanted to crack the DNA of Mego. So I put up a website, new thing. You know, some guy, named Jeff Bezos just put up one called Amazon.
Heard about that.
Like an online bookstore. Like, wow, cool. I could buy books from him. Doing my website. 25 years later, I'm still doing it. I'm still in my garage and I'm still filling orders.
Yeah, now you're a key part of the actual company, which is
that's just
right?
it.
Yeah.
2004, I met Marty at MegoCon at the Hotel Pennsylvania in the city. And I said, I want to bring back Mego. I had tooled the body in China. My wife, so I've been doing the replacement parts. And I said to my wife, I really wish I could do the body because there's such a need. There's only so many of the originals. I said, if we had new bodies to be able to sell, it really spurs on customizing and being able to, do production. And she goes, well, we could take a home equity loan. Oh, by the way, that girlfriend that gave me the Megos, I married her.
That's a keeper.
I forgot that part of the story.
Might be a little bit important, yeah.
Yeah. So, we've been married for 35 years.
Well, congratulations.
And she is just always supportive of this.
Is she Mrs. Mego?
She is she who must be obeyed. Marty had said to me, he goes, hey, I know you'll do what I say, but what happens if your wife and I disagree? I go, sorry, Marty. She must be obeyed.
There you go.
If she tells me I cannot play with you anymore, that's it. But so she said, we could take a home equity loan. And I had 2,000 bodies made. And I delivered to my driveway. And I'm like, wow, Mego's back. Then I met Marty and I said, I want to bring back Mego. And he said, all right, a lot of guys want to bring back Mego. Show me you're not full of it. Go get a license like Star Trek and then come talk to me. Okay. Took me 2 years. My friend Joe had worked in Star Trek licensing through Paramount and with Creation. And he got us a meeting with somebody at Paramount, and they said, oh, well, that's great. We love it. But Diamond Select Toys has the license. They got it from Art Asylum. They continued it from Art Asylum. And so we met with Chuck Tessera from Diamond Select, and he went, yeah, we'll try out a couple. So we did Kirk, the Klingon, Spock, the Andorian, McCoy, and the Romulan. They sold well. They're like, okay, great. Let's do another, But I did them at my factory with my tooling, and they screwed up the rank on Spock and McCoy. They gave them silver rank instead of gold. I didn't find out until cases arrived from Diamond, that I ordered 500 of each to sell over time,
And how many curse words did you use that day?
That was New Year's Day, 2008.
That's got to hurt.
Yeah. I opened the box, saw the silver, and went, oh, my God, you're kidding me. The samples I'd gotten were gold. And I emailed and said to my guy in China and said, Tony, what the hell? And he was like, oh, they're always silver. Here's a picture. Here's a date stamp picture with Spock with 3 gold rank bands. And I replied, here's my email reply to you saying, no, Spock has 2. Kirk has 3. Spock has 2. McCoy has 2. They did McCoy and Spock same time because the only difference between them is the head. Mm. He goes, all right, I sent the kid to get the stuff. He brought me back silver, not gold. I said, what difference does it make? It's just toys. I'm like, it matters. And every grown man who got these are like, why did he screw it up?
That's a rough first outing.
You can always tell the ones I made with diamond versus that, those two.
You could even argue it was intentional, even though it wasn't.
No.
But no, I'm trying to cover for you like a decade later.
No. I will just take my lashings. I will, yes, I have sinned.
Sorry, we forgive you because you've done many good things since then.
Well, but so then it was, we got a retailer that wants an exclusive. I was like, Con. I want to make Con. They were like, well, but Mego didn't do that. We don't have to do just what Mego did. We can make others, So made Con, and it was an exclusive, and everyone went crazy over it. James Brady, the guy who sculpted the Gorn, and Sulu and Chekhov, and the Andorian ambassador, he did Ricardo Montalban. James had a site, still has a site called Mego Madhouse, where he's shown custom Star Trek figures for years. And I have, whenever possible, I go to him to get, hopefully someday we'll get to do Trelane. I have that sculpt,
That'll be fun. He's only had, the one Playmates figure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the core of the Klingon that's in the play set was sculpted by James.
Which I was looking at earlier and I was like, this is beautiful. Because, I think of Mego figures from the old days and I think of this Kirk, for example, and they're very simple, idealized, like we said.
Rotational casting.
Yeah.
It smooths out the fine lines, Now we switch to injection because that's the industry standard and that gives better likeness. The Worf that you showed, definitely better detailing.
It's wonderful Worf right by my head here, which is more recent.
And
DS9
we did
line.
Saru from Discovery.
This Saru is great, by the way. I regret not getting this signed when I was at Trek Island last year.
Yes.
But you must have gotten at least 20 of these signed for yourself, I feel like, right?
No, I don't bother celebrities.
So I would have done that. I'm that guy.
I don't know. I never really, after one bad experience with Adam West, I avoid celebrities.
I mean, this just rings Saru to me. This is so great. I love this one.
And there are custom-made boots.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking boots.
To make the hoof.
Yeah, right? Like, how cool is that?
And once again, I had to fight with Mego management to get those custom-made. Because they're like, why can't we just give them the regular boots? And I go, because we're not selling to children.
I mean, the cool thing, too, about this Saru also is, as I look closer at it, even has, like, the little Starfleet insignias.
Yes.
In this pattern. Like,
absolutely.
Again,
Paramount said that is important.
It is.
Thanks to digital, we could print. We could make the little tiny emblems, and we could print it on the gold.
Which is so cool. So, I mean, let's talk about what's changed, though, for Mego, because a lot of things have changed production-wise, internally. Mm-hmm. Where are we at today in 2024? What's new with Mego? What are they doing? Give me all the scoops, man.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Why not? While we're here, what's coming next?
Let me just, Senator, on advice of counsel, I cannot answer that question on the grounds that it will incriminate me. Yeah, I go through this every, why don't you show us? Why don't you tell us what you're working on? Why don't you? Because it's in progress. And the worst thing to do, all right, One Piece. You saw at Toy Fair, we showed One Piece Megos. Well, then the licensor came back and said, no, we don't want you to do them.
That was the One Piece Netflix series, by the way, right? Not the anime. Yep.
Yeah. And we were like, but we showed this. We're taking orders. And they went, too bad.
Those are pretty nice figures, I have to admit, too. They actually look really great.
This is the problem, is licensors call the shots. Mm. In the old days, the manufacturer called the shots because there were so many retailers. Now it's just Walmart and Target and a couple others that just, they call they tell you what you're going to do. And that's fine. We have meetings with Walmart and it's like, okay, this is what we want you to do. No problem. I'll be happy to do these, it's like, but at the same time, if they go, we don't really understand the whole, Star Trek thing. And I go, well, but that's a really important market and you have to, And there's a big fan base, and it's demonstrable. I mean, we point to conventions, and, and they go, oh, you think? When we were doing the Target wave in 2018, I was pushing for Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, superheroes, Wizard of Oz. These were the big sellers from Mego. And they were going, no. Brady Bunch, Facts of Life.
A Brady Bunch, which sat on those shelves for years.
But the point is, they were like, we know. We're Target. We know. We know what sells in our stores. Well, okay. Well, you're buying 600,000 figures. So I can't really argue too much, except I have to say, I know the collector market. I know what people like and what they don't. And I see what sells. And I'm telling you, you can buy a Fonzie for $10 on eBay. There's no reason to be making Fonzie again, but they wouldn't listen. So I was like, look, at least let's do something different, like Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch.
I said, okay, Brady Bunch. Let's do Alice, Greg with the tiki, and Marcia with the football. And I actually have her bruised up in the face, and the football hit her in the face. And they were like, oh, why would you do that? I go, because otherwise it's boring. You got to be ironic.
Didn't quite work out, but I mean, I guess that kind of leads me to a more loaded question here. I'm going to reach across you for a second and just grab one of these guys. Because these are an important footnote in Star Trek toy history, and it's going to bring me to a big, big question here, because it's something I hear discussed a lot in Star Trek toy communities. So in my hand is the Picard from McFarlane Toys. McFarlane Toys got the Star Trek license not long after Discovery Season 1 or 2, somewhere around that time.
2015?
Yeah, I think it was right before Mego may have come back. And so they announced Picard, they announced Kirk. I have both of them here. They showed off to others, and that was the end of it. That was the end of their line. And I would talk to them years later, and they'd say it just wasn't profitable. I would go to Titan Merchandise at Toy Fair, and they did these great little cartoon-style TOS and TNG figurines, and they stopped after one wave of each, and they're like, it just isn't profitable. Most recent, we can look at, again, Playmates. Playmates revived the Star Trek line in a course, sort of like modernized way of what they did back, 15, 20 years ago. And it had one line, but it kind of died a horrible death in stores. And I talked to people at Playmates at Toy Fair and a few other toy events. They just said it just wasn't profitable. It isn't making sense for us. So really today in our toy market, now that that's gone, I mean, Haya is doing some stuff, and they're probably not going to keep doing that for much longer. Exo-6 is doing something, but at a very high price point. That's kind of different league. That's so, what's the issue with Star Trek toys? And Mego's still doing it. So, what's the issue, and what's the secret sauce that's keeping you guys still making these?
Well, our price point's low. We have a built-in fan base that we know we're selling to. They're not going away. They're still, everybody's got their list. It's really a question of the licensing of the corporations. It's like we pay for the license, but if they say, well, approvals are a problem, and they're not really. I mean, I don't have a problem because the people I deal with at Paramount know Mego, know it, and know that I'm going retro, and so they go, okay, we get you, but Playmates is expecting Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle numbers. They're looking for a bigger, and they're like, and they're trying to do distribution out at Walmart, and they're going, and what they're competing with is Funko, who is sucking up so much retail space, and I don't understand why.
It's kind of funny, just not to interrupt you, but we're talking about Mego and how they produce cost-effective toys. You look at a Funko Pop, and it doesn't get much more cost-effective than that.
No, I don't think anybody ever opens them. I don't think it's something you play with. It's something you put in the office to let people know what you're into. It's a calling card. It's not really an action figure because there's no action to it. So I think it's a lot of fetishing. When you're a licensee, you have to go with what the licensor says, and if they tell you, well, we don't really think you're doing enough, or they aren't doing enough. Paramount would tell us, oh, wow, this is the 45th anniversary of Star Trek, the motion picture. Well, what are you doing? What events are you doing? Nothing. This is the 40th anniversary or something of Star Trek 3. Okay, I'll do Spock in the prayer robes. Oh, okay. What events do you have? I mean, the conventions. It was all Creation. Creation had everybody, and they had their big Vegas show. And now they've kind of, Paramount's taken that away and given it out to other people. So Star Trek is very much driven by the cult of personality. It's the actors. That's what people really focus on. I watch people stand in line and spend hundreds of dollars to get, autographs.
I'm one of those idiots.
I don't get autographs. It's fine. Great. It's your thing. I don't want to talk to actors, and I don't want to get their signature on a piece of paper. And yet Marty says to me, "You want me to autograph for you?" Oh, absolutely, Marty. Absolutely. Yes, that'd be great. Yes, autograph it. I don't get autographs. Unless it's Abraham Lincoln.
Admittedly, I do have a signed Marty Abrams Star Trek Mego.
Awesome.
So yeah, I do have one of those.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about, not having to huddle together in the basement of a Holiday Inn. When in the old days, Paramount is a huge organization that has so many properties. And I think their attitude towards Star Trek lately is we should let it rest a while.
Something definitely seems like there's a bigger picture problem happening. But that's above our pay grades.
And yet at the same time, but we're also reading, they're talking about selling it,
Exactly, yeah.
So, but that's not why Playmates stops.
Yeah.
Playmates is going, where's the numbers? And the reality is the toy aisle is still kids. And kids don't really see Star Trek. And they tried with Prodigy, but it didn't really land.
I can say, too, I never saw a single Prodigy action figure in a Target or a Walmart.
And yet I was ahead of my license. It didn't really lend itself to Mego.
Yeah.
If I was a molded plastic toy, and I think that's the problem. I think they wanted Playmates to do Prodigy. And Playmates said, well, why don't we try a line of the vintage? And that didn't, light up.
Yeah, so we got a few Prodigy figures, not even the full cast, mind you, just a few of the core members. And it was really only like Amazon and Entertainment Earth, Big Bad, the usual suspects.
Which means it went to mainly adult collectors, and they're a much smaller. Listen, I would love it if I could put a product out and know that I could do the whole series, I could do the whole, and I could put it out there and people will buy. But most of us don't like pre-orders, and pre-orders are absolutely essential. Pre-orders are voting. The reality is nobody wants to take any risk. In the old days, Toys R Us would buy cases, take a shot on it. Hey, looks good. They trust their instincts. And I bet kids will like this. You just don't have that anymore. They want to place, they want to do pre-orders because the ability's there. You don't have to risk it all. Amazon wants us to put up pre-orders and then fulfill them, and our distributors are like, well, how many pre-orders have we gotten? They want us to put out, and this to me is something, the way products are produced kind of has to change. I do a prototype, I get photography, I put it out there, we take orders, then we go to production, and it's like maybe we need to make a bigger deal about the pre-order. Maybe I should be showing stuff in progress and kind of build instead of having to keep quiet all through the development.
I see that with a lot of smaller companies now that I actually do buy third-party figures from is they're showing the whole process. They're showing a lot more behind the scenes.
Look at Exo6.
Exo6 is a great example.
I follow him on Facebook, and he is constantly showing off.
Yeah.
And I wish I could do that.
I mean, Schubert and his company do great work.
But he's also working a whole different Sideshow.
Yes.
Sideshow has a subscription base. They don't have to sell to a distributor. They have enough people on their subscriber list, enough big fish, that when they go, we're going to make this many, and we're going to sell it to these people before we even make it. Mm-hmm. And if, and we have our list, and we don't have to say anything. And then maybe we'll send some out to, to distributors to pick up the extras. So I think I have to, at least for Mego, have to try to changed the process where I do get to say what I'm working on and what's in progress. And here's a first shot of this outfit. But the problem is everybody wants to be a cook. So all these Mego ambassadors, okay, I did Two-Face for the world's greatest line. The prototype was purple on one side and a plaid pattern on the other side. Well, some people said, I don't like it. That doesn't look like Two-Face. That's not what the comic looks like. That's not the retro Two-Face, you know. Well, my boss said, well, what artwork do we get for the package? And I showed him the artwork that Warner Brothers gave. And he goes, well, it should look like that. You know, the guy in the box should look like the artwork on the back. I said, fine, we'll change it. I'll have the factory make a tan suit on one side and a purple plaid on the, checkered pattern on the other. And then when it came out, people were like, well, I like the old outfit better. I like the prototype outfit. Well, this sucks. Why'd you do that? I'm like, there's not one voice. So when you go out there and say, oh, you want to see what I'm working on, I can't take everybody's advice.
Yeah.
I have to go, well, we're not going that way. Well, I'm not buying it then. You know, it's frustrating.
It's not easy. I mean, it's adult collectors, and I'm part of them too. I guess so. You know, I'm not shaking my fist angry or whatever. But sometimes we want things that we want, but we can't always get what we want.
But it's taste.
Yeah,
I can put out a figure, and everybody will have a different. Bizarro did Bizarro. Now Warner Brothers does him with a purple, like a magenta cape, and a dark blue, so that you can distinguish him from Superman. In the 70s, he had exactly the same outfit as Superman with the backwards emblem, Legion of Doom. Well, that's great for the animators, but on the shelf, I want to make Bizarro look different than Superman. And this is what Warner Brothers wants him to look like.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, you should have done him like this. You should have done him exactly the way Superman. I can't, I have to do what these people, they're the license holders.
Well, as we start to kind of wrap up this interview here, I got to ask, because I already sort of did ask, but I'll ask one more time here. Since you can't tell us who's coming down the pipeline, and we just had this discussion about really why you can't, can you at least give us some insight about Star Trek and the Mego world? Will Star Trek be continuing in the world of Mego?
As long as I have anything to say about it. I mean, if Paramount doesn't renew our license, well, then what can I do? We keep going back and saying, yes, we want to make more. Yeah, we did Brave New World.
Strange New Worlds?
We changed the world. We did
wrong book.
Pike. We did Pike.
I wouldn't mind seeing Mego do Brave New World.
So I wanted to do Pike in the green shirt and Spock. The Ethan Peck Spock. With the pattern. I have a prototype ready for number 1. Waiting for the new Mego female body that I've been promised. I don't want to use the 50-year-old female body.
Might be time for a change.
Yeah, it looked pretty bad back in 1973. Oh, by the way, I never had any Mego females. My mother would not buy me or her for fear I would take her clothes off. So I got her back. I tooled the female body for her when I did it with Diamond Select, and I had 2,000 naked, headless female bodies sent to my parents' house because they were home all day. FedEx delivers instead of having them leave it on my driveway.
I just hope she didn't open the box up and be like, what the?
The FedEx guy would bring them right into their garage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got there, I opened it up, like, look, Ma, look.
The female form.
Yes. God forbid. Thank God I didn't see some plastic breasts.
You prevoit you.
Yeah. It would have made me into some maniac.
So we know that potentially there could be more Star Trek. We'll leave it at that for now. And we'll see where it goes.
That's right.
All right. Well, I'll take it as an answer. I know it's, again, I've done this toy thing for a long time too, so I know folks can't really give as much details as I'd love to get. But the fact is, if the license continues, there's a good possibility. I'll leave it at that.
Listen, there's nobody who wants to say more what I'm working on.
Yeah.
If you could see my desk, at the office, it'd be like, but you can't do that. I remember NECA used to have every so often have some guy that would be like, hey, this is what I'm working on.
I miss those days because you'd always see things hiding in the background.
And it's like, yeah, but what you don't know is that he got in trouble with the licensor for showing on, things that haven't been approved. And they're like, well, now we're going to get crap.
Yeah, and that's the danger of licensed
changes.
toys, danger of licensed products. So as I tend to wrap up these interviews, I like to ask my guests a little bit of a lightning round here. But in your case, I just want to ask you one specific thing to tie it back to Mego. So on the show, I'll typically ask, what's the greatest piece of advice you ever got from someone, whether it's about your life or your profession, that you still think about today? But because we're talking Mego toys, I want to spin this to, what's the most valuable lesson that Marty Abrams ever gave you, professionally or personally, that you still think about today?
Marty's amazing. I go to his house. He treats me like a son. My son and I were at Marty's house yesterday cleaning out his garage of product. He's, cleaning up that mansion of a house he has on the water. And I got to go in there and get product. And he says to me, and he meets my son, who's 16, and he goes, "You got the greatest father ever." And I go, "Oh, thanks, Marty." He goes, "Hey, listen," he says to my son, "I know there are times, young men and their fathers don't agree, but you got to listen," because Marty is De Niro.
Yeah. For folks who don't know.
De Niro in Casino. Not Jimmy Burke, who, had killed everybody after the Lufthansa heist. Marty is Casino De Niro, who's run the casino, and he's like, either you were in on it or you're too dumb to know. That should never hit a jackpot. Marty has every number in his head he ever did. And he remembers what he paid for World's Greatest Superheroes from the factory, what he sold the Toys R Us for, what they reached. He is completely in there at 81. He is still sharp, and he said, "Don't ever retire. All it does is make you wear out." He goes, "Still work, just keep working." He goes, "These guys that retire, they die. They got nothing to get them up in the morning. I don't care if," he says, "I'm 81 years old." He goes, "I still get up every morning, eager to get to work, eager to get on to the business." He says, "It keeps you focused. It keeps you alive. It keeps you going." So he is the most amazing man I ever met. He's a father, and he really cares.
Well, it's great to hear. I mean, I've had the chance to meet him a few times, and he's awesome. I'd love to have him on this show sometime. Maybe we can find a way to wrangle him into this.
Not hard, because he's not that far away.
That's what I'm saying.
And he loves to sit in front of a microphone.
So I'm putting this out there, Marty. Let's make it happen. Call me. Let's get him up here in Press Record Studios. That's where we are one more time today. We're here, Press Record Studios in Westbury, Long Island, New York. And for everybody out there who's watching or listening and is liking what they're hearing, is liking what they're seeing, because this is very different than the usual Trek Untold. If you want to come on in here, use our space, check out pressrecordstudios.com. Email us. I'm part of this company here. I'm part of this group that's doing all this wonderful stuff here with my partners, Richard Butler from Rageworks and Corey Gums from the Black Podcasters Association. We three have joined forces to make Press Record Studios happen, and we'd love to have you be part of this and help tell your story. So pressrecordstudios.com. Paul, what do you think of the space? You're the first guest I've had in here.
This is awesome. This is beautiful. This is a clean, well-lit place that has no sound. I haven't heard a car going off, a dog barking, a kid screaming. This is nice.
Your check's in the mail, Paul. Thank you. But for real, Paul, thank you so much. I've honestly wanted to have you on Trek Untold for a long time, so I'm really great. We got to do this face to face. The wait was worth it for that alone.
Yeah, anytime, anywhere.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you so much, Paul. Thank you. And we'll wrap things up here, folks. So if you want to follow Trek Untold on all the social medias, we're there. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Trek Untold. Shout out one more time to our Patreon supporters. If you want to support Trek Untold financially, you can visit patreon.com/Trek Untold. Please don't forget to subscribe to the video version here on youtube.com/@Trek Untold. Basically, Paul, everything at Trek Untold. That's kind of the moral of the story here.
Yeah.
That's kind of the gist of things. Yeah. So again, thank you guys so much for watching here. And I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. Until next time, as I always like to say, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.